What's up everybody, welcome back to Comic Slice, your boy J-Rock right here. Today we're gonna be dropping a review slash overview. You watch the videos, you kind of know how this goes. I'm talk a little bit about the book, give my brief opinion, like a review. Then we're gonna do the overview where I'm gonna show an overhead view of the physical build, flip through some of the art, and then talk about it a little bit more. And this book is freaking huge. It's
Masters of the Universe.
He-Man. The cover looks freaking awesome. The back cover, look at the art right there. That's insane right there. I'll show the overview and all that in a minute. After I talk about it a little bit. Look how big this is. This book is, oh my god, it's humongous. If this was a manga omnibus, this would be a 12 in one. Because you have 12 volumes in one or 4 hardcovers. Which each hardcover has 3 volumes in one, right? Or sometimes 2. So either way, it's humongous. You definitely get your money's worth. It goes for $150, but it's almost 1,600 pages. So yes, it's kind of expensive, but you will have enough to read for the whole month. It took me forever to read this. I took pauses and read other stuff, came back to it and whatnot, but it took a long time to finish this book. It's a lot of pages. Now let's talk about it a little bit before I do the overview. What did I think about it? Well, first of all, the art, you get Mhan. He's like the main artist on it. You get a few other artists, but he does the majority of the issues. And his art, it feels very late 90s to me, right? Like late 90s Image. Because usually when people say 90s, they're usually talking about Image comics. Because they're the ones that gave the 90s their reputation. It's not all comics were as insane as they were. Other people were just, Marvel, DC, were just trying to copy them and keep up with what they were doing because they were the popular ones, right? Now at times this art, there's certain panels and pages where you could tell he really got off and it looks dynamic. It looks like really good. You could tell he put more effort into these specific pages or panels because there was a big scene, right? A big moment, and it shows that he put more attention to detail and he really got off. But then the majority of it is kind of just mediocre. It's average art. To me at least, it doesn't really, it's not bad or great, it's just middle of the road, right? It would just blend in with anything else. But like I said, there was certain panels where you're like, wow, it doesn't look like the same artist, because you could tell he really got into specific pages and whatnot. So I did like some of the splash pages and so forth. They were real dynamic and awesome. There was a lot of big action scenes because the second story is called Eternia War, so it's the whole big showdown, a big war goes down. What does this cover? I'll get into that when we do the overview, but it basically covers about 6 trades, right? It has issues 1 through 19 of He-Man and 1 through 15 of the Eternia War. So 2 series of He-Man that were going on, and a few other crossovers and stuff like that. Now, it felt like we were getting introduced to a lot of characters because they're trying to introduce every He-Man character they can in such a short amount of time, in about 30 issues, right? So a lot of them, you didn't really get to flesh them out. You just threw them in there as henchmen. Like, oh, this is just a character that's helping Skeletor or whatever. So it would have been nice to kind of see each main character have their own group. Like Skeletor have maybe 2 or 3 of them, but then a lot of the other villains to have their own cliques, right? Be leaders of their own thing. Like Merman would be the leader of the Sea People, right? And Trapjaw will work with Skeletor, obviously. Beastman will have, like, you know, his people, the Beast People or whatever. Stuff like that, instead of having everyone all in one group. That I wasn't the biggest fan of, but I get it. You couldn't flesh out a bunch of different groups because you're limited on how long the series is going to go. I felt the series started off a little rough. We start off where He-Man, he doesn't remember who he is, so he's slowly bumping into Merman, then to Trapjaw, to different characters, one by one, and they recognize him, but he doesn't recognize them. So as he fights them, he's like, hey, these fighting skills are coming natural to me. He's like, it's like I used to be a warrior or something. Like, his memory is slowly coming back. And Skeletor points out that a long time ago, he sent them to live at peace as on a ranch, basically, right? To be a farmer. Be at peace and to not be a warrior anymore. And he spared them because Skeletor's his uncle. So he's like, he's my nephew. I don't want to kill him. I just send him somewhere, have him forget his memories. As long as he doesn't leave that area, everything is all good. The story starts where he leaves that area and his memories slowly start coming back. So the villains are all seeing him. Hey, he left the ranch, right? So now they're like, oh, like they're worried. What if he remembers and he's back to being He-Man and we can't keep doing all the villainous stuff we're doing, right? That's where the story starts, kind of. And it never explains to us how they got to that point. Like, It kind of briefly explains it through Skeletor and through the other characters. They give you little hints at what happened before. But it would have been nice to have a story telling us the story of how He-Man ended up on this ranch. What was the big battle with Skeletor? We didn't get that. We just got thrown in the middle of this where he's coming back. Once his memories come back, it leads to a big showdown with Skeletor. He beats Skeletor, and now we get to the ongoing series. In the ongoing series, Skeletor is no longer around, right? He has been defeated. He-Man has made his comeback. Then we get another 6 issues of each character's origin. Man-at-Arms, He-Man, Skeletors, and so on. So we get an origin of each character, kind of what they've, how they became who they became, right? And that stuff comes into play later in the ongoing series. Some of those stories are, I wouldn't say very important, but they do reference them. So you're like, oh yeah, that was from that origin story. Okay, yeah, I know what they're talking about. That type of thing. So those first 6 issues with the Battle with Skeletor weren't my favorite. And the 6 issues with the origins wasn't my favorite either. Once we get to the ongoing, it starts getting better in my opinion. It starts getting pretty good. The first 6 issues, it's Keith Giffen, I believe is the name of the writer. He did a really good job. I really enjoyed the way it started. It came in with a bang, right? And then we get Dan Abnett after the first 6 issues. So when Dan Abnett comes into the book, that's why I picked it up, because I was like, I like Abnett's writing from what I've read of his. And I thought, I want to see what he's going to do with He-Man. And it almost felt like it says on the credits, plot, script, and then writer, right? So the plot and script was some other guy, Dave Robertson. So he came up with a story, like this is what the story's going to be about. And Dan Abnett's job to write it, right? Like, okay, I got to get from this point to this point because this stuff has to happen. So I got to get from point A to point B. And it felt like he was kind of almost just getting from point A to point B. He wasn't adding any extra flair or anything interesting in between. There's like, we gotta get to this castle. Okay, so they get to the castle because that's what the plot says, right? But he doesn't have anything interesting happening in between. Just like a fight scene, get to the castle. Now he has to do this. Fight scene, get to this area. Fight scene, get to the sword. Whatever, but nothing interesting as far as story-wise. Just fight scenes of people trying to stop him from getting to these places. So I felt like they left a lot of meat on the bone, if you know what I'm saying. Like, they had a lot of interesting ideas. You could tell the plot was good, but it's almost like the writer was like, I'm just trying to get this over with or whatever. So they fleshed out some of the ideas a little more than others, but I felt there was like, they could have gotten really into detail into some of this stuff, right? And it could have made a much better read. Overall, it was okay. I enjoyed it for what it was. Had a lot of action, a lot of cool scenes, and it had a good plot as well. Just the execution sometimes felt very minimalistic, if you will, which didn't make it bad, but it just left something on the table where you feel like could have been better, like you could have done stuff here, right? That's my one problem with it. Now, I originally gave this a 6.5 out of 10. So that would be about a 3 out of 5, right? So 3 is very average. But I remembered I gave Dan Jurgens Captain America, I believe, a 6.5 as well. And this is far better than that. That one should have probably been like a 6, not a 6.5, right? But that one probably should have been a 6 out of 10. So I kind of want to change my score from 6.5. I go, nah, you know what? It's a little better than that. It's more around a 7, 7.5-ish, somewhere in between there. Let's say 7.25. Keep it in the middle, right? 7.25 out of 10, meaning it would be 75 out of 100, right? It's not bad. It's worth the read. It's interesting, and once you read it, you'll know what I mean. Where you're like, where's this story going? Oh, something interesting is here, and then they kind of just get right to the point. Then again, when the next story, oh, like it's getting really interesting. Then it just gets to the point again. You're like, you know, it's like, they could have done stuff in between. Overall, though, it was fun enough to read. I enjoyed it. At the end, there's some DC versus Masters of the Universe storyline from the 80s. Now there's 2 of them. One's a 3-issue story arc, and one is just a one-shot crossover with Superman. The art there is by Kurt Swan, who was the Superman artist at the time. It was very average art in my opinion. It kind of fits Superman. I don't think it worked with He-Man. But then you have a 3-issue story arc, and we're gonna talk about that when I do the overview right now, because that one was really good. It was probably my favorite out of everything here. It was probably my favorite story, that 3-issue story arc. I believe it was written in like 82 or something. So the fact that it was written back when He-Man was popular and he had cartoons and all that stuff, they had a better gauge on the character, right? Because he was very current at the time, right? He was new and he was popular, so they knew more what to do with him because he was the it thing. And these other ones, it's like they kind of forgot who He-Man was in this other new current stuff. So let's get to the overview, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. Okay, this is the front cover. This is the back cover. That's the spine. This is the dust jacket. These are the inner flaps. And that's the cover without the dust jacket. I really love the art on this. He-Man and Skeletor look vicious. This is basically the first story arc. What it leads down to is this big battle. Here's the binding. You get a nice hole here. You get it, very little gutter loss. Look at that. It's very little. It's not too much. The less you have in between here, the better. So it lays pretty good. The thing with this is you get a nice big hole here, but when you lay it down, the weight of the book will crush this down. You know what I mean? Like when it's actually laying down, it won't be the same thing. Alright, so here's the inner covers. It's just solid black. Here's the first page. It says He-Man and the Masters of the Universe Omnibus. You get everything you're going to need right here in one book. That's good and bad depending on the way you look at it. The next page, giving credit to everybody that worked on the book, on the writing, on the story. Then down here, it's all the people that worked on the actual omnibus, on the build of it, the design, and so forth. Here, what I like, you get a table of contents. So here you get the first story, He-Man Masters of the Universe, all the issues here. Issue 5, issue 6, issue 7, the first story arc. Issue 8, 9, whatever. Then DC versus Masters of the Universe, He-Man, and so on and so on. You get all the stuff right here. He-Man Eternity War, He-Man Thundercats, and the original of 1982 and 83. It's 2 stories. So here's the first page. With DC omnibuses or hardcovers, usually get this. The covers, which I like, you get the covers, but it doesn't tell you what issue it is. You don't get a title. It's just like a version cover, right? So here, then you would get it right here. The Last Night. Writer Jeff Johns, Howard Porter on pencils, so on and so on. But doesn't tell you the issues or number or anything, so that kind of sucks. So here you start off with a Beastman. See him right here. And here's He-Man wandering in the woods. And Beastman and them are trying to stop him. See, they're chasing him because they don't want him leaving that little village he's in or kind of like a farm, right? Because once he leaves that area, his memories will come back. And they don't want him turning back into He-Man because He-Man is a threat to them. So the art is really good here. I enjoyed it. It fits He-Man. And you see it's dark and gritty. Very dark and gritty at the beginning. Look at that. You get this character. I'm not familiar with him, but he comes and kind of helps them out. Here is the next issue. And I think this is Philip Tan. Who does this cover? Yeah, it's Philip Tan. It says 2012. Killer covers on this series. This looks real awesome. Again, no cover here, no name or anything. I'll tell you on the other side. It's Desert Storm. So this is again the prequel look. Again, the art looks really good. The Castle Grayskull. So then we'll go to the next cover. Look at the covers. They just start getting better. Look at this. You got Merman down here under the water. This looks phenomenal. The covers were some of my favorite covers in comics in general. I really like these He-Man covers. They remind me. They're not exactly like the Savage sort of Conan covers, but they have that feel to me. Although they are a lot different in style. But yeah, Merman looks real cool down here, and we have him. So you know the next issue is going to be Merman. Each issue he's bumping into one of his old villains, but he does not recognize them. Only they recognize him. Here we kind of get the origin story of He-Man. You see him bumping into Skeletor right here. And Skeletor's looking at him, and he's realized that his uncle is now like something villainous. He's no longer his uncle. Something has happened to him. I don't want to spoil anything, so you guys can read it, how he turned into Skeletor. And he became kind of jealous of He-Man because since he's the brother of the king, he thought I should be next in line to be king. But it has to be a son because he had an heir. So maybe if the son's dead, I would be king, right? So it becomes this hatred towards He-Man, which then evolves into much more than just hate towards him. They become rivals for a bunch of other reasons after that. But look at this art. Might not be for everybody. The way it moves is kind of weird, but it works. I really enjoyed it. Sometimes, like with Alex Ross, I feel like it's a bunch of pinups, right? Like there's no flow to the art, no movement. It's kind of stiff. Here, on the other hand, I think it has some life to it. It moves a lot more. I mean, look at here. You can see I'm kind of like in shock. It has a feel to it, right? Then over here, you see this looks gritty and kind of eerie. And look at the way they do the silhouettes. Instead of black, it's like light, the opposite, because the world is dark. So the silhouettes are bright. Thought that was real interesting. The issue ends. Now it gets to the showdown. Skeletor and He-Man, right? I'm going to skip this part because that's something you guys should see on your own. Here's one of the 2-page spreads. You get the sewn binding here. You see the sewing in there. Looks good. You get a little bit of gutter loss. If you open it, you could see a little bit better. But overall, it is a big, huge, thick book, so you're going to get the gutter loss. Obviously here, He-Man's dad, Randor, has been possessed by this creature, this snake creature. I forget his name. But story gets interesting here because it's almost like the scrolls on Marvel, where constantly you don't know who's being possessed by these snake people. So someone that you think is on your side could actually be being possessed by a villain, and they're actually already long gone and dead, and now you're actually working with someone you shouldn't be trusting, right? Because they're a villain and they just have the mask or the skin of someone that used to be on your side, but that person is gone, right? So that happens a few times in the book. Nice little surprises and stuff. Some more, another 2-page spread. This one goes, sideways view like that. Is it a 2? Oh no, it almost looked like a 2-page spread because there's line. I really like this page here too. Look at this. You got the creature here chasing this girl. Looks dark and sinister in the shadows. And look at what they did with her. The facial expressions, the blood. It really shows emotion, right? Sometimes they don't always get this right, where the characters don't really look stressed out and whatnot. Here it looks really good, and she's up front and center. So this looks, I really like the way it looked here. Like she's really in fear of this thing here that she's running away from. I really like this page. He's fighting these serpent people here. Nice big splash page. He's carrying the axe. He's no longer using the sword that makes him He-Man, right? So he's almost like depowered in a way. And look what happens here when he's fighting these creatures. Bam! Like this situation happens here where he's grabbing the shield, the axe. He's fighting them, and something happens here that when he pops back out, look at this huge page. This looks awesome. He's He-Man, and for the first time in the whole story, he's wearing the loincloth. He's wearing the armor, the axe, the shield, everything from the old action figure. And back in the days, this looked awesome because for the majority of the book, the artists have had their own design of He-Man, right? It wasn't this. They kind of modified him, right, to look more current. And here they went back to the old school look, which was so cool. And it also points out that when they have the old school look, because a few of the other characters also get their old school iconic look, but when they get these looks, it's actually like they've been devolved, like they're back at the beginning, and their new look is because they're more powerful, right? So he has to work his way back up to the current sword and the current armor he's wearing now. So he's back at the beginning. That was pretty cool. I really enjoyed this. This was like, holy shit, when I changed to this page, I was really pleasantly surprised. Okay, now I want to talk a little bit about these two old school issues. Now look at this. This is by Kurt Swan. This is the cover. Let me go back to the cover. This is the cover here. It's like a crossover. You got Kurt Swan on art and Paul Kupperberg on writing. They write this story, and this character, Sodak, he almost feels like one of those guys from the Fourth World flying around in his chair and all that stuff. And then you have the kingdoms, right? The kings and all that. It has a little bit of the Fourth World feel mixed in with the He-Man of Eternia feel, right? Which is good because it's a crossover. You want to have a feel of a DC Comics and of a He-Man, right? But this art just, it looks very mediocre. It kind of, I didn't like it on He-Man. Look at Beastman. Doesn't even look like that. Like, he looks all weird. That's not the way he even looks. Kind of chunky. But then we get to this one. This story arc over here. It's one of 3. So it's a 3-issue story arc. And this one is far better. Now look here. You have the same writer, but the artist is George Tuska. He used to draw Conan. So right away in the first page, you see here, that's an iconic Conan pose. Where he's riding the bull, and he's riding a bronco, and he has his hands up like that, right? With the axe and the shield. I was like, that's Conan right away when I saw it. And I know George Tuska did some Conan, so it makes sense, right? And then when you start flipping the pages, look at the art here with the kingdoms and so forth. It just felt like I was reading Conan, but with He-Man. This was really good. I really enjoyed this. If you're a Conan fan, you will enjoy this story, because even the way the writer, even though he wrote both of these stories, here is like he has some input from the artist. Like he said, I'm trying to write them this way, and he writes He-Man. I like the way he writes He-Man and the other characters a lot more. This because he feels less superhero-y and he feels like a barbarian, kind of like Conan, right? So, and the whole story is really good. I really like this one. Basically, Skeletor is trying to get this sword so he could have powers equal to He-Man's, right? So they're looking for the sword for him. And let me just flip to some of the art here. Look again right here. Look at how badass Skeletor looks and the snake here. I was like, yeah, this feels like I'm reading some old school 80s Conan the Barbarian. And here, this character, Zorak, he's way better written right here. Here, he feels like you know what they were trying to do with him. When I read this, I was like, okay, I get what he's supposed to be. He's supposed to be like a cosmic beam, almost like the Watcher and characters like that on Marvel. But the fact that he's on this chair, it really resembles one of the Fourth World characters. I don't follow Fourth World, so I don't know. I'm not familiar with their names. But I remember a character that has a chair like that, and I go, this feels a lot like that character, the way he speaks and all that. But anyways, this would be the last. Just flip to a few more pages. Even this looks more like a knight than it does like Tila. I'll leave it right here, and yeah, guys, this one was good. This was a really good story. This was probably my favorite one, so it ended on a strong note for me. Alright, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and hit that like button. It really goes a long way, guys. It really helps out the channel. The last two videos kind of flopped, so you know that would help. Also, if you're not already subscribed, go ahead and hit that subscribe button if it is that you like the content, right? So that way it notifies you on your feed every time a new video drops. Other than that, I just like to thank you guys for your time, and I'll check you guys out next time.